he's now the manager.
I had a band with him.
Yeah, Jane project that Noah did with Scott. But he's like the manager at a hi-fi bar in Burlington now. So when this record finished and we were talking about ways to promote it, I think I was actually the one that most wanted to start to tap into the hi-fi bar network around the world, and kind of was like, I know there's these places where they put a lot of effort into getting really amazing speaker systems and really amazing amps for record players, and people go there and just listen to music, and it seems like such a cool thing. And so this hi-fi bar in Burlington, Paradise Hi-Fi Bar is one of them, and there's a handful of others that we've kind of been trying to tap. And so I wish I could be at all of them, but no, we're just here. And we've done. There was already been a few happening like earlier in the week. I actually did one in New York last Sunday, I think. So yeah, I'm trying to move around.
So you've been. This is a bit of a different vibe here to what you've been doing the last 2 days. You've been in Berlin and then Paris, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last 2 days it was like 15 or 20 people, so it was quite a bit different.
And a much more sort of rarefied gallery type atmosphere, was it there?
The first one in Berlin was a gallery, and the second one was it was a record shop like this, but they also specialized in hi-fi equipment, both building their own and repairing stuff. It was a cool space, but this one feels quite a bit different.
Better atmosphere here, right?
It felt like a show when we were going to come on. I was like, here we go. I get pumped.
The applause, yeah. So, genuinely, I think it's my favourite Animal Collective album. I'm not just saying that in a kind of Zane Lowe style. I actually do think it probably is my favourite. And I remember when I first got into music, Fat Cat sending me loads of the kind of old stuff, pre-Merryweather, when obviously things changed a lot then. But this, I know Josh, you explained a bit about this record already, how it kind of came about, but it's, it does seem very different to Time Skiffs, even though it's sort of a sibling, isn't it, in some ways?
Yeah, it's curious to me why that is exactly, because it really was all written the same time period with all the same instrumentation, all the same intention. I do think a lot of credit has to be given to just sort of the process of recording and working with Russell, and it's not, it is kind of wild in some ways just how much comes down to how something is tracked and mixed, I wonder, not in a revisionist way, but just if the songs that we had done for Time Skiffs had been recorded this way, if they would have felt as different, and so I think a lot of it really is literally just that. And we'd gotten to play the songs live, maybe for an additional. Well, it wasn't that much, but it was we got to do some live playing after doing Time Skiffs, and I think that probably opened the songs up a little bit. And I also think that the reason. So all of this music, with the exception of Soul Capture, had been written and ready to be tracked in January of 2020. And the reason why we ended up making Time Skiffs the way we made it is that when we realized we were going to have to attempt to make a record remotely during a pandemic without seeing each other, which was a really initially awful thing to think about, and then just became something we embraced. One of the decisions that we had to look into is which songs we could actually pull off remotely, and a lot of that had to do with which songs could be done to a click track. So obviously a song like Defeat, which was the 22-minute long epic in the middle, there's no way to do that song if we can't see each other and look each other in the eyes. Magicians, similarly, especially at the beginning of Magicians, that very, very much requires the room breathing along, so we can all kind of see each other. So we ended up kind of selecting songs for Time Skiffs that worked to a click track, and so in a way, these are the songs that sort of inevitably are slightly more organic in that way, because they're the ones that did sort of need the openness of no click track in a way. So yeah, there was a little bit of the pandemic really had a big impact on what these two records were and how they came out and why they feel different, even though they are the same era in a way. If that.
I think it worked out good though, in that I feel like both groups of songs seems to go together, even though I agree that it was more logistical concerns that made us decide what songs were going to go on which thing. I do feel like at this point, having done them both, the groups of songs do kind of I think we just got lucky with that. But I think it's especially weird for us too, because we played all the Time Skip songs and all the Isn't It Now songs on tour, just mixed up all together. So I think it's especially tough for us to separate the two, but I do agree that this record feels quite a bit different than the last one.
because you were playing Defeat back in 2018.
Yeah. I mean, the first time Defeat was played, I wasn't even there. The best version.
Tangerine Reef days, was this?
It was around.
Yeah,
There.
it was
I think it
around
was
the
a
same
little
time.
bit after that, but
Yeah. Yeah, we were kind of all on a break, and there's a venue in New Orleans associated with this group of artists that the place is called the Music Box Village, and it's a permanent venue that's outdoors. And what they've done is they've curated a bunch of different artists to come and literally build buildings or shacks or structures that are in and of themselves musical instruments. So it's hard to describe without fully seeing it, but it's
they'll have like a shack that's like a big xylophone, and you can just like whack on it to make sounds.
or there's like, you know, the rails of like a porch are all guitar strings like strung across with a pickup and a delay pedal, or there's steps that have MIDI triggers on them, and they like, you know, whatever. So there's all these different these pieces. And I'd known about that place for a long time and lived down there for a minute, and we wanted to do something with them, and they invited us to come and do a performance there. And since the band wasn't particularly active at the time, me and Dave and Brian decided to write an hour's worth of new music that would be specific for that venue, and we tried to leave it really open so that we could actually incorporate those instruments in, and also we wanted to invite some local musicians to play with us. So we sort of wrote pieces that had a lot of kind of like space in them to kind of fill them out, and Defeat was one of those songs, and Magicians from Baltimore was one of those songs, as well as Royal and Desire, and an aspect of Prester John from Time Skiffs. So yeah, those all go back that far. And
I saw a comment on a YouTube video of Defeat, you know, one of these early live versions, and it said something like, you know, if Defeat doesn't end up being 30 to 40 minutes long on record, I'm going to be really disappointed. So I hope they're not too upset with the
Almost got
22
there.
minute.
We got close.
So when you were, you know, then kind of working on these songs in this cabin, Leaper's Fork, is it? Leaper's Fork?
Leaper's Fork, yeah.
In
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
What was it actually like in this cabin? I've heard that it was sort of, there were a lot of spiders. I know you're not a big
It
fan.
wasn't really a cabin.
Yeah, a cabin is a sort of a that's making it seem a little bit more. It was just a small
Like
house.
a 3-bedroom house or
Yeah.
something like that.
There
Had
was
a
a
little
there was a
yard.
barn next to it that did
Full of
quite
spiders.
quite a few spiders in it, and a few of them made it into the house now and again.
It
But
was a drag.
it wasn't like we weren't roughing it. It was a nice little spot. Yeah. But yeah, just rural Tennessee. I mean, we really didn't do much. It was just a very small country road. I think there was like a little general store down the road that we could like get chips and stuff from, and usually had to drive like 20 minutes to get groceries, and we just cooked every day and pretty much just kept to ourselves, and the living room was where we set up and all of our gear, and yeah, it was nice.
We like to find places that are really remote, kind of away from anybody we know or anything to do. Really, it just kind of helps us zero in and focus on the thing. So typically, when we record, we'll go to a spot like that.
Who's the best cook?
Probably
Not me.
Probably Brian, but I feel like me, Dave, and Brian all try and kind of like break something.
Noah doesn't try.
He doesn't really. Yeah. No, I feel like you did make one thing one night that was really good. can't
I
remember
can
what it was.
cook pretty good, but I wasn't trying to cook for you guys.
You weren't trying to.
So you've been wanting to work with Russell for a while, haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to do all this stuff with him. So
Yeah.
that was, in January of 2020, we were hoping to record all, it would have been everything except for Soul Capture, because that just hadn't been written yet, with him. So yeah, that was like, this whole era felt like it was gonna, well, I mean, we didn't know it was a risk, but we felt like there was some potential magic that could happen if we worked with him. In large part because, you know, one of the choices we made for this record was that, you know, the way that Noah was approaching the drums on this record, and that Dave chose to only play the electric bass was his primary instrument for the entire record. It sort of, the rhythm section of these songs sort of felt like this really core heartbeat of everything, and not that that's the only thing Russell does well, but he certainly does drums and bass really well. So I think that felt like this, like, I don't know, it just felt like the right record to try and reach out to him for, so.
Yeah, I think your drums have never sounded better. Your drumming has never sounded better, I should say.
Thank you.
Hey, what are you saying about the old stuff, man?
Well, I thought you were rubbish, but it turns out you actually.
Well, I feel like I had a very different sort of attitude or approach to playing the drums on this one, and that I feel like before I was just sort of banging away, and it was more about like an energy thing. And for this one, through a variety of inspirations, one of which was a bunch of the James Brown drummers and the meters and that kind of style of music, I guess. And there was also this one, you know those tiny desk things that NPR does on YouTube? There was a Anderson .Paak one where I was really struck by his drumming on that, his drumming and his singing. I just thought it was really, really amazing, especially like the sort of mechanical. Because with the James Brown stuff, you don't have too much video where you can really see how they're doing it. There's a couple of videos, but it's tough to really kind of see the mechanics of it. And on that NPR video, it's like the camera's right there, so I could really see kind of what it looked like, the stick in his hand and doing all that. And I just was really intrigued by it and wanted to see if I could kind of do my version of that. And that sort of led me down this path of like just a really different approach to the drums and a different sound. And I guess I would categorize it as like focusing more on the way I hit the drums and the different tones I could get out of the drums. And ghost notes is all really nerdy, but I worked at it a lot. It was I was sort of obsessed with it for a little bit, and I hope it produced some good results on the other side. So I'm glad to hear you bring it up.
Yeah, Magicians of Baltimore especially. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. So if your plan was to work with Russell on sort of both, or what would become both the records, were you thinking of a giant kind of double album or something?
We knew it was more than one album, but I think at first, at least the discussions I remember having, we thought it was more like an album plus an EP or something like that, which is sort of typical for us. But after 2 weeks at Leaper's Fork, it was clear that we had like more than that for sure.
Yeah, I don't think we'd quite gotten to the place where we knew what was going to come out of it when we were booking the initial sessions. So I think there's really no way of saying. Yeah, it wouldn't have been one giant double, triple, quadruple EP, LP or whatever this would have been. There's all sorts of ways it could have panned out, and we just never got to the point where we made sense of it.
And we'd written a handful more too that just sort of we couldn't figure them out.
Yeah, it's true.
A couple of mine we couldn't really solve them.
Are they still sort of in the air?
No, they're dead.
Yeah,
those are gone.
Yeah. Maybe someday on some compilation somewhere there'll be like a recording from the rehearsals that will be like, oh, this actually sounds pretty good.
Well, Dave has those VHS tapes, but they all sound like.
That'll be in a good new direction.
Yeah.
I think they sound cool, but.
I mean, Dave did the reverse album, so
It's
true.
Why not do that?
It's true.
All fair game now.
I mean, it's just going taking a break from the now to go back to the distant past. I mean, you guys, you were playing together from like the early '90s, weren't you? You two, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in some form, like me, Noah, and Dave and Brian have similar stories. Noah and I's side of it is that we met in like 1986 and we're playing music in school, but started kind of writing our own music together in like 1991, 92. And then through high school, both had a really strong interest in that, both together and on our own. And then I met Dave and Brian at the high school that I went to, and they had a similar kind of relationship. They had sort of met each other when they were in 13 years old or so, and both had an interest in sort of making their own sounds, and were recording some on their own and started to do stuff. And they had a band in high school, and they asked me to play keyboards with them, so I became the keyboard player in Automine. And I was already playing music with Noah at that point, and I started sharing them the stuff that we did together, and eventually we all started kind of cross-collaborating kind of towards the end of our high school days in like 95, 96, and by 97 it was, to some degree the four of us were pretty interested in working on music together all the time.
We all played at a high school show that I think you guys set up at your high school that was called Gold Sounds. after the Pavement song.
Which I actually found out recently that event still happens, which is sort of crazy. We started Gold Sounds in 1996.
That's cool.
And they still do it to this day, and I don't think they know that we started it.
It's still called that.
It's kind of cooler that they
It's still
don't.
called Gold Sounds, yeah.
Nice. I was going to mention Pavement next because you were probably still are all big fans, right? So
I got to see them in October. I'm a fan.
so the early stuff you were making, was it sort of Pavement-esque?
I think
Theirs was a little bit.
Dave was definitely. I mean, I think you can hear in Dave's very early songwriting that he was definitely like really loved Malcolmus's approach to songwriting. I mean, I think if you heard Automine music, there would be little bits of it that you'd be like, oh yeah, that's not like not to a rip off degree, but like you can tell that that's a big influence for sure.
Our stuff was kind of more just like vanilla indie.
Sure. Whatever.
That's how I would describe it.
When did that change? With the drugs? I mean, it's not very vanilla.
Meeting Dave and Brian, I think actually, yeah, and drugs. No, I think that there was like it's not just Dave and Brian for me. There's some other people, like I feel like Jen Kaiser is one. There's a few people in our lives early on that started to share music with us that went outside of like kind of alternative radio and major rock radio, and starting to, I think some of the early things that I remember hearing that really shifted my way of thinking were like the Silver Apples or Sun City Girls, Pavement to a degree. I think it was things that were starting to kind of be like, wait, this is not, it just felt like a very different approach to music, and it opened everything up.
I think I was just lucky to meet certain people who would show me music that they were excited about. Like Jen Kaiser and I worked at a bagel shop together, and she was like, here's a tape I made you. And it had Sun City Girls on it, and a band Fuck on it, and just all sorts of stuff that I didn't
Strapping Field Hands, I think.
know about. What was the like drum and bassy kind of thing?
I don't remember.
Third Eye Foundation, I think it was.
Maybe.
Just all kinds of stuff I'd never heard before, and just like Jen Kaiser, shout out Jen Kaiser, and these guys, it was just, I feel lucky to, I don't think it was drugs so much. I'm trying to avoid the drugs influence. I think it was mostly people just showing me stuff that they were excited about, and letting that sort of expand my vocabulary with music.
Yeah, I mean, to agree. It's like I remember very notably the first time I heard Can, it was in Dave's basement, and it was Tango Whiskey Man, and I was not high, and I just felt like my life had changed. Like I didn't understand, like I knew, I don't really know how to quite explain it. It was just like this really life-expanding moment, and I feel like there was so many moments like that with music, of somebody playing something to me for the first time that just felt like it changed the way that what I thought was possible, or what you could do with music. And
I think the teenage zone is an especially sensitive moment for that kind of stuff. Like people seem kind of more open to having powerful experiences during that time than after that time. I don't really know why, but seeing my own kids sort of in that zone, they don't like any of my shit, but I see them being really moved by certain things that I hope they can hold on to, and I hope I still have that capacity, but it does seem like there's a special sort of sensitivity at that age.
Definitely. You are open to things, and you haven't heard some of these things before, so it just is, you're not jaded, I guess. So with the new record, was there any sort of other people's music that sort of fed into it? 'Cause I know, I think Centipede Hurts, they were like, I think there's been talk of like mixtapes you were doing with like Portishead on and things like that. And so with this one, was there anything that you were all kind of loving?
Well, for me, it was really the James Brown drummers, and that it was all like drumming stuff. For Dave, I know it was kind of like early music.
Yeah, he had been really influenced by, or listening a lot to like kind of very early classical, like even 12th and 13th century kind of like choral arrangements. So I think songs like Defeat and his kind of element of Prester John and King's Walk and stuff like that were very much, I mean, even all the Clubs Are Broken, which is like the kind of second to last
Ren
song.
Fair Jam.
All those things, I think that was him kind of bringing in this sort of, like kind of early Western classical into kind of like Baroque kind of stuff and letting that kind of filter in. And not in like a compositional way, but I think we were feeling inspired by sort of a feeling that you got from listening to jazz records. There was a Chico Hamilton record that we were listening to a lot at Leaper's Fork, and we were just kind of like, I think in a way that's almost more like the sound of what we were doing and the arrangements we were doing and the sort of the player aspect of it.
There was an atmosphere to that.
Yeah.
But both the performance and the recording of it, there was just sort of like a feeling that pervaded the recording that I think we were hoping to capture.
I think maybe pushed a little bit of like the art. This is, I think, to us an attempt at being kind of minimal in the way we approach arrangements versus, as Noah's been putting the last couple of days appropriately, we've often taken a very maximalist approach to our arrangements and how we end up recording things, and I think we really wanted to try and leave space, and so that's where a lot of the decisions, like I said, like Dave just playing electric bass is actually like, that's him deciding he's not going to add things to the sonic spectrum and all these other places, so it means that we can leave a lot of air, and so I think in a weird way, like jazz records kind of had or what we were hearing in that's kind of what that was.
And it helped that Russell was like, no plugins.
Yeah.
And we were like, can't we just like throw some reverb on? He's like, no.
Well, we put reverb on. We just used an actual EMT.
Like a plate, yeah. But there was, he wasn't open to any sort of like, I feel like the kind of go-to sort of like tweaky tricks that we might employ. He like wasn't down for it, so I think it helped that his sort of hardline stance kind of helped us be more, just sort of let it be what it was after recording it.
Is there something special that you guys feel about when it's the four of you? And I guess, Josh, if it's not the four of you, it's usually not you. It's usually not you. But,
I can't answer this one. This one's for Noah.
Yeah, I think it's special when it's four of us, but it's, I mean, every different configuration has its own sort of dynamic and challenges and benefits and weaknesses, I feel like. And the four of us is the same, to me.
And Stride Right, I wanted to ask about. I mean, that's a beautiful song. It's one of the kind of most straight ahead songs that Animal Collective have ever done in a way. And that's yours, isn't it, Josh? How did that come about?
I mean, I wrote that song. I don't know that's how it came about. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, when you put it in the context of Animal Collective, it's I've written the fewest songs for the group. That's the third song. I mean, it's Wide-Eyed, Royal and Desire, and now this. So I think it's a much less heard voice in the context of Animal Collective. And I think as a songwriter, I am a sort of a more straightforward writer, I guess. So I think that's kind of why it feels that way. And I don't know. I mean,
not straightforward.
Say it again?
Not straightforward. No.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit more straightforward. I don't like. Yeah, I don't know how to. I don't know how to say it. I don't know.
So Noah, how did the rest of you sort of? I don't know. What did you think when Josh brought that in?
I mean, I think it's cool. In the same way, I did a record with my friend Pete last year, and the first like 4 songs we did, it was all me singing, and from my experience with Animal Collective, having Josh write more and more songs and sing more on the songs, I just think it's really cool to have. I think it benefits the album when you have more voices and kind of more perspectives and more like characters in the music. So I'm all for it.
You're the George of the band, aren't you? Bring in
Don't
just
start
the rare
that.
gems.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Have you already, had some disagreements about this?
I wouldn't say disagreements, but
That's fair.
we try to avoid that
Yeah.
conversation.
I mean, you're not really Ringo, no.
I'm cool with that. I'll be Ringo. Ringo's cool.
Look forward to your country and western album. Nice.
Maybe not. Not right now, anyways.
It seems like a sort of well, partly it seems like intuition is very important to you guys. I don't feel like you second guess much that you've done, or you probably wouldn't have had the career that you have, the progression, you know. A lot of it doesn't make sense in a kind of sensible way, but it's kind of better for it.
I just don't, I feel like I don't like to think about, I don't like it to be a mental exercise so much. I feel like most of the music I really respond to and the music that's really stuck with me, it never seems like a mental exercise on the part of the writer or the performer. So even though I feel like the most mental we'll get about the music is after the fact, like after it's done and it's kind of out there, that's when I feel like I'll allow myself to think about it in those terms. But typically, and I think I can speak for the rest of the guys, that we're always trying to have it be some kind of like instinctual expression, and then there's the editing of that chunk can be mental, but like the impetus for it, I feel like has to be, or I like it to be some kind of like primal or very honest, organic expression sometimes. Not something that you think is good. It's something that you feel is good.
And do you like to? Well, I guess you don't like to look back and think too much about the past records either.
It's not my favorite, just because it sort of makes me feel like I'm. It's probably my own hang-up about it, but it kind of makes me feel like we're creatively dead if we're just focusing on the old stuff all the time. So I tend to like steer conversation towards the new stuff.
Are you the same, Josh?
I'm not as precious about it, but I stand by the kind of the philosophy of it. I think that there's I don't think we would have lasted this long if we hadn't had that philosophy. You know, I think it's led to there at times it does feel like almost like a what would you say here, bloody-minded focus on like change at a point where you're just like, you know. But I think what it does do for us is incredibly rich. It means that we're always in some sort of deep water where we can't just kind of coast and float. We're always having to kind of figure out how to stay up, and I think that that's led to incredible things in my mind. So
definitely. And you were saying up there that in the green room that you know there are Animal Collective fans who kind of love every record, or there are like sections of fans that.
I don't think there's any Animal Collective fan that likes every single record.
No, that's not the what we were talking about is actually the opposite of that. Is that I think that we've kind of curated a group of fans that there are people who like every aspect, like, you know, these people like that, and these people hate that, but they love this, and these people hate that, but they love this, and it's like, but everybody, there's somebody who loves everything, but none of them love all of it. But it's like, I don't know, it's a really interesting. I just feel like we've offered something that's so varied that you end up kind of like you have something for, you know, it's not something for everyone, but it is like this kind of like the people.
Something for some people.
I guess I just think that, you know, a lot of groups, like their sound does sort of in some ways seem a lot more like in a pocket that. If you like this band, you're going to like all of it. And I think with us, it's not that. I think it's like if you like this record, then you might also like that record and maybe this song off that record, but you're going to hate this.
But there's also bands that I like a lot who kind of seem to come up with their thing and then just iterated on that thing. So I don't think we mean to say that that's not like a good way to do it, or there's no value in that, but maybe it's just because we're kind of creatively restless people. We're always trying to find a room in our house that we haven't gone into before. But like a band like The Strokes, to me, kind of has like figured out their thing and just sort of does it over and over again in a way that's always really satisfying to me. So I don't mean to knock that, but it's not sort of the natural way for us, I don't think.
I mean, there was a cheer for Centipede when I mentioned that. That's, you know, probably quite a divisive one. You were saying that's probably, well, a favourite now, is it?
For some people it is, and I think for some people it's still it's a burrito hitting a windshield. I think it just depends on your attitude. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, it's yeah, I mean.
Well, the thing about that analogy is when somebody told me that, I was like, so it's good?
So the probably your least favourite question of the night. Are there any sort of plans for or thoughts about what could be next?
No, we're kind of we've both consciously and just through organic sort of realization of how we work. I think the way that we've made this all last for 25 years is allowing for natural periods of
Waxing and waning.
Yeah, waxing and waning, sort of like the focus of like Animal Collective as this like charged force. And we've been working on all of this music, that this is sort of the bookend for 4 or 5 years now. And I think we're kind of at that phase right now where everyone needs to kind of like spread back out again and explore things on their own. And I mean, there's certainly things that I'm sure will happen. I mean, Noah and I are talking about, he wants me to kind of help him record his next solo record, and I'm working on solo music, and Dave and Brian and I are playing some solo shows together later this winter, like where each of us will play solo sets, but there might be some collaborative elements in there. And so I think we're kind of in a phase right now where I think that, we're also very interrelated, but it's not necessarily focused on what does Animal Collective as a group do, and more on kind of like how do we kind of find new ground. And at some point in the future, and the whole point of it is that we don't know when that will be, I'm sure there'll be something that we'll catch, and suddenly we'll be talking to each other again and wanting to do kind of a group activity. But I think right now we're kind of in the open pastures kind of zone, if that makes sense.
I mean, forget the future, isn't it now? I mean, that's what you're telling us. It's. I mean, as I said, this is I think one of your best records and one of my favourites. So it's.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, I agree.
It's great. I mean, time-wise, do we have time for a few questions from the good people here?
Okay with me.
Not me, yeah.
Maybe like 3 or something, just a few questions maybe. If anyone has any. There's some signing to happen, Yeah.
Thanks for making the most inspirational music of all time.
Thanks for listening.
I'm musically really interested in how non-musical stuff, like music concrete stuff, can mix with melody. And I think in Animal Collective and your solo stuff, there's equally catchy sounds as much as there are melodies and lyrics. And I was just wondering if you had any sort of kind of process for how you blend those two kind of worlds, where the intersection of like non-musical chords or sounds meet the melodies.
I don't know that I have much of a process about it, beyond just getting as excited about sounds as I do about lyrics or song structures, or it's all kind of, if it's good, I'm into it, so I don't know that I have a one sort of cookie cutter process that I apply to everything, but I suppose I try not to focus on just one aspect of it, and whatever feels best for the song is usually what I try to follow that sort of path generally.
The question, just because I don't know if everybody heard it, was he was asking about the way that we kind of use non-musical sounds, music concrete kind of ideas that have nothing to do with sort of traditional musical things within musical things, and that both things can result in being catchy to some people. Probably sounds like garbage to others. And so that's kind of, that was the question of sort of like what the process is for doing that, or how that kind of came about. And I don't know, for my own part, I think that relatively early on, and it did have to do with certain, exposure to certain things. I mean, in addition to meeting Dave and Brian, I mean, my dad had an interesting record collection. I heard The Residents when I was like 3 years old, and he had, some like Wendy Carlos records, and which is not really music on crap, but I sort of had exposure to some of that stuff, and I think realizing that I found music in the sounds of insects, which is a very, a kind of a trope, but it's real, and listening to cicadas when I was, 13 years old in Baltimore County, and kind of hearing the music of it and trying to understand why that sounded, pleasant to me, as did a Beatles song or something. And so I think that is something that, on some level, all 4 of us have had experiences like that, and certainly leaned into it when we started really talking about music. So.
Oh, so I'll repeat the question next time. Thank you, just for doing my job. Sorry. For the other 2 questions we have, yeah, over there.
I know you had to cancel a couple of shows a couple of years ago. you have any plans to come back to the UK anytime soon? Because we really miss you.
Thank you.
I think everyone heard that, right?
Yeah. The answer I have is at the moment we do not. I think we kind of, piggybacking on the answer I gave the other thing before, we're at a moment right now where I think that we need to kind of, as a group, allow things to be open. And unfortunately, right now, touring is something that you have to book almost 8 months in advance. It's a really, it's kind of intense. And we were really shocked ourselves last year. We had to realize the financial realities of what it took for us to try and make a tour happen and how precarious it was. So it felt like a lot to take on, and I think right now, given that we have been working on this music for so many years, I think for us to, if we were to stick with it and keep trying to tour with it right now, we would actually be limiting our own ability to be able to move forward and whatever the next thing is. So I think right now we're allowing things to just be, which is sad for us too. I love playing, and I wish we could be playing shows too. But
We'll be back though.
yeah, we will.
It'll be better next time too.
Thank you.
All right, well, what's next? Yep, back there.
So, like, what artists are you interested in who are sort of current right now? Who potentially could, like, I mean, you've never done collaborations before, but you know, you potentially do collaborations, but who would we get interested in right now who are doing good stuff?
Dean Blunt is one of my favorites. I hope to keep doing stuff with him. Mika Levy, we're all big fans. Your turn.
Honestly, just I just go blank. I don't have an answer. I'm so sorry. I'm sure there's tons, but I'm not gonna be able to think of them right now. Anytime anybody asks me what I'm listening to or what any question like that, I think it's a neurological thing. I just go.
I love collaborating with people. I feel like I've gotten way more into that than I used to. And it's not, there's sort of a variety of reasons I'll choose something to work on, and it's not always because I think the artist is like my favorite thing. Sometimes the song I just think is really amazing. Sometimes I just feel like I don't have anything going on at the moment. I just want to work on something. So I'm kind of down to collaborate with pretty much anything. It just sort of has to be like the right moment for it. But Dean Blunt, I'm always down.
Nice. Okay, well, I don't want to eat into signing time too much, so yeah. Thank you guys, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Cheers.
Thanks everyone for coming. And thank you, Rough Trade.
Incredible collective, everybody. Thank you for coming out. If you're staying for the signing, it's on the front left of the store, so please queue down by the books down this way, just down the left-hand side of the store. Thank you. If not, have a wonderful day.